Back now with some breaking news about WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. President Biden was asked about a request from Australia to drop his prosecution for espionage and publishing confidential military materials. The president saying the White House is considering it. For more on all this, I want to get right over to NBC's Matt Bradley, who's tracking this for us from London. So, Matt, kind of walk our viewers through why this request first comes from Australia and why President Biden would say that he's actually considering this.
Well, I mean, this comes from Australia because Assange is an Australian citizen, and even abroad for almost his entire life, they are kind of enjoined, the Australian government, the Australian people, to advocate for one of their own. And when it comes to a crime like this is not a violent crime, and a lot of people throughout the world, especially outside the United States, consider that what Assange did, those 18 different charges that he's facing, as a little more than just journalism itself. This was something where he was speaking truth to power. That's how he portrays it. That's how his wife, who's his strongest advocate, portrays it. That's how people throughout the world portray it. We see marches here in London all the time. He's still very, very popular. And so, this is something that to free him would be perhaps a boon for the Biden administration.
Yeah, as popular as he might be in other parts of the world, as you know, as you've been reporting on this as well, there are folks here in the United States who think what he did was treacherous, publishing military materials, putting them out there on WikiLeaks. He did it to other countries, too. It wasn't just the U.S. But he's served time, right? Explain to our viewers, he's been in prison for a while in London now.
Yeah, I mean, he served time, Tom, but time is one thing. I mean, he served time hiding out from the law in the Ecuadorian embassy. That was a very unusual way to spend a prison sentence. And as far as the jails are concerned, as far as the legal system are concerned, that's not time served. He still has to do a number of years. But again, he faces a maximum of 175 years in jail. Now, for a man who a lot of people consider somebody who didn't kill anybody, who didn't hurt anybody, a guy who exposed what some people consider to be very grave secrets, though there weren't a huge number of massive revelations out of what he spilled out of WikiLeaks, not like what we saw from Edward Snowden later on, he still is going to get a lot of sympathy, and not just from courts in the U.S., but from courts here in Britain. Again, last month, they actually kind of delayed his extradition to the States. So there's a lot of sympathy here, even among the legal system, a lot of questions about whether or not these charges are worth, getting him back to the States for. This is a question that really goes to the heart of what is journalism, what kind of privileges do governments enjoy, and does Assange represent a threat to any of these governments that he exposed? Remember, he didn't really come up with a lot of big revelations to justify what he did. Instead, he just simply dumped a ton of information with a lot of names of people that the U.S. government was trying to protect, people who, he's been accused of not going through and trying to etch out some of these names and revealing people who were supposed to be kept secret, people who were working for the U.S. State Department and the CIA. Those names were exposed because of Assange. So those are the sorts of crimes that he might end up sort of answering for in a court of law.
Do we know, and I know it's still early in the process, and obviously the White House has not made a decision, but he's been in a prison in UK for, I think, since 2019, maybe for several years now. Do we know what would happen? Would he essentially be released on his own recognizance? Would he be able to live again in London? Do we know anything about the process?
That's a good question, and, that's something that I think the court would have to come up with. He is being held in prison as he's waiting extradition to the United States. So presumably once those charges in the United States go away, he'd be facing a lot less legal jeopardy here in the UK. But the fact that he hid out at the Ecuadorian embassy for all that time and caused such an endless headache for authorities here, really, for the better part of a decade, there's a lot of people who are still angry with him about that. And he is not without facing charges here, but it sounds as though he has served his time here in the UK. But this is a man who surprises a lot of people. It's possible he could be facing more charges here once those charges go away in the United States or in other countries. He has made quite a few enemies. Tom.
Matt Bradley for us tonight. Matt, we thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.